In today's episode of HR Visionaries, we talk to Lizzy from Ascendion. Lizzy will tell us about how they implement diversity, equity, and inclusion strategies. We talk about how to implement a great culture. Stay tuned. Welcome to HR Visionaries, where we unlock the secrets of modern HR. I'm Benjamin, your host. Join us as we shed light on today's HR universe with HR leaders and innovators from across the globe. Whether you're an HR pro, a business leader, or just curious about the future of work, this is your shortcut to the forefront of HR innovation. Brought to you by Hire, the AI talent attraction platform. Welcome to our latest episode of HR Visionaries. I'm looking forward to my guest today, Lizzy. Thanks a lot for taking the time.
Thank you for having me.
Lizzy, could you tell us a bit about yourself in like 5 or 6 sentences? Who are you?
Sure. Well, I'm a global HR operation professional. I have over 16 years experience leading agile HR operations. And I also have expertise in establishing and scaling high quality deliverance of human resources and culture initiatives across various industries and geographies. So that's a little bit about me.
I'm so looking forward. Lizzy, why did you become a professional in the HR space? So why not any other profession industry?
Yeah. Good question. So, like most HR professionals, I did not ever grow up dreaming of being an HR professional. I actually grew up thinking that I was going to be an attorney. I have always had a love of the law. I've always been intrigued by our justice system and how the law works and how the law shapes our society. And so that's always been something that I've been passionate about learning. And so when I graduated from college, I went to go work for a law firm in Chicago. And it was an aviation law firm. They specialized in aviation litigation. And so I got to learn firsthand about everything from preparing for going to trial. I got to interact with clients. I got to learn the ins and outs of, how to file things at court and all of those things that go within the legal industry. But during that time, I found that what I enjoyed the most was the more of the office administrative type of work. I enjoyed planning things. I enjoyed just getting to know more about how to run a business. And so, I just really had a love of people. I really came to life when speaking with our clients. And so I decided to leave the legal industry and go into recruitment. And so my first kind of, pseudo HR job was working in the staffing industry and staffing attorneys, paralegals throughout the Chicago area, because Chicago is a really big, has a really big legal scene in that sense. So during that time, I started to interact more and more with HR departments, learning about what they do. And I fell in love with it. And from there, I left staffing and I went into my first job as an HR generalist working for a law firm in Chicago. And that's where my love of HR really started. I was able to combine my love of law, my love of people, my love of planning events, and my love of, being involved in the business. It kind of, everything came together and I haven't looked back ever since.
What's your favorite show on TV when it comes to lawyers?
My favorite show when it comes to lawyers. I've started to dive into Suits. I wasn't big into it when it had first came out, but recently it's become accessible on the US streaming platforms. And so I've started to get into that. I think it's a really good show. But yeah, that I would say that's what I'm into right now when it comes to attorneys.
I can definitely recommend The Good Wife. It's amazing piece. Really, really well made. It's also a Chicago law firm, apparently. So
Yeah.
it's actually pretty fascinating. Okay, well, it's a super interesting career journey. So when leaving a law firm, so what were your considerations? So given, well, generally a law firm is considered to be a very good environment, have a very well-paying career. Um,
Hmm.
so what were your lines of thoughts back then?
Yeah, well, I was pretty deep into pursuing law at that point. I would, had sat for my LSAT. I was applying to law schools. But I also had the privilege of seeing a lot of first year associates coming into the law firm. And I got to see their experience of, a lot of when you're getting started in your legal career, a lot of what you do is research based.
Mhm.
You're more helping the attorneys, and you're not really it takes a while for you to really start to build up, your own clientele and get to where you see like it, in TV shows and things like that. It's not like you just graduate from law school and you just dive right in, right?
In front of the
I
jury.
mean, yeah, in front of the jury, right? It takes obviously experience, mentoring. You have the book knowledge, but you have to have the actual hands-on knowledge when it comes to that. And so realizing that probably the first 5 to 10 years of my career was not going to be focused on what truly interested me
Mhm.
about the legal industry, that's when I said I had to have a really, you know, honest conversation with myself and say to myself, okay, what makes you happy? What is it that is going to help me to come alive and really enjoy the work that I do and be able to throw myself into the work that I'm doing in order to be successful? Because to me, that's what success is. It's
Mhm.
about enjoying what we do and feeling that we are fulfilling our purpose through our work. And so that's where, working with people, working with our clients, learning about the business, those were the things that I were starting to become second nature to me. I didn't have to think about those. I didn't
Mhm.
have to try. I didn't have to strive to be successful in those areas. And so I started to gravitate towards that. And I decided, what for me, it wasn't about the money or the prestige. It was about the impact that I was making. And so at that point in my career, knowing what it takes, to get to go to law school, to work for the law firm, to get started in law, and then seeing it even from very senior employees, the owner of the firm, those sorts of things, I was able to really, think about, okay, well, what direction do I want my life to go? And maybe this isn't for me, but I can help to connect people with their dream job. So that's why I decided to go into recruitment. And to me, recruitment is the absolute best place to start in your HR journey. I know people get there many different avenues, but recruitment is one of those areas of human resources where you really get to learn about people, why they want to work at the companies that they choose to work at, what drives them, what is a cultural fit in terms of when we're talking about, is this a great place for this particular individual to work? It touches a little bit of everything. And so that's where I was able to segue from recruitment into being a generalist and then working my way up into being a manager and then leading director, that sort of a thing. So I always, tell people if they're, thinking about HR, if they're interested in HR, I always tell them, hey, try recruitment. It's one of those areas of human resources where you're going to know very quickly if HR is for you. Because it deals with people and it deals with, making those connections, right? So yeah, that's a little bit about my journey and how I got to where I am.
I find that incredibly interesting, and given this, well, I think also when you are, well, an expert in the recruiting area, it's perhaps one of those key elements and key qualifications in people. Qualifications, perhaps the wrong word. So perhaps it's perhaps one of the most important skills a person can have to be very honest with him or herself, to think about, okay, what am I best, not what is the most prestigious approach, what is the most money-making approach, but more like, okay, so what is it that makes me truly happy? And if I can answer that question well, that is actually the thing I need to see in a candidate, whether he or she is able to answer that question incredibly well. What is actually the thing that makes me truly happy, rather than just prestige and money?
Absolutely. And I'm of the thought too that when it comes to picking a career, okay, that you have to pick something that you are passionate about, that is second nature to you, that you feel is fulfilling your life purpose. Because if you put your heart into something, you're gonna prosper in that thing. Okay. It doesn't matter if it's landscaping, if it's, running a grocery store, a jewelry maker, whatever it is that brings you to life and you can pour your heart into, that you're going to be successful in that thing. So it's not always about, well, this job makes me this amount of money, so you can go and do that, right? And that job could, it will make a minimum, you'll get a minimum amount of income, because there's a salary range for that position. But are you going to be the best, right? And is that going to make you happy? Being mediocre in something that, brings you money, but you can thrive in things that you're passionate about. So that's my philosophy on life. I tell my own children that it's very important, and that is one of the key things that I've learned early on in my career doing recruitment. Because we have, when people are coming in, when we're oftentimes talking to candidates about, why do you want to work here? What is it about the company that you're interested in? We really have to see, is this the person's passion, right? It's not just about, did the AI match with their resume? Do they have key buzzwords? Do they have the background and the years of experience that the hiring manager is looking for? But we have to go deeper than that. And we really have to understand, am I helping this person fulfill their purpose in this role? Because if the answer is no, then you're looking at turnover, attrition, the person not being a cultural fit. We really have to look at it much, much deeper. And we have to look at it from the standpoint of, how is this going to impact not only just our company or getting this position filled, how is this going to impact this person, right? So those are the things that I always recommend is, bringing that empathy, really being able to look at our candidates as the people that they are, and being able to deep dive and get to know them in that process. Because many times, I've had candidates that I've interviewed, they weren't a fit for the position, but something else came about later on. And I thought of that person. I knew that person at that point because I had stayed in contact with them. And so when we talk about pipelines, we're really talking about the relationships that we've built, and that the deposits that we've made into the candidates that we've spoken with, where we can be comfortable going back to that person and saying, hey, I know we were talking about this job at this time. Let's pick our conversation back up and let's talk about, something else came up. I think this might be a fit for you, right? So I'm very passionate, as you can see, when it comes to talent acquisition, when it comes to recruitment. My philosophy is, it's all about the person. It's all about people and making those connections.
Have you ever seen passion and ambition not matching, and the person being successful nevertheless, and if I might provide an answer as well from my perspective, I think I haven't. I think I've never seen anyone who was like very, very not passionate about a job, however, took the job for money or for prestigious reasons, and then in the end ended up incredibly successful. I must say I'm not sure I've ever experienced a situation like that, and I was wondering whether you have.
I have.
Really? So you
I
force
have.
yourself to be successful despite
Yes.
not liking your job.
Yes, I have seen it. I had seen it. But I can tell you something though.
Must be a pain, right?
When we talk about success, we have to also really go back to what is that definition of success, right? Because I've seen them achieve things within that industry and achieve both, things for their organization as well as for their own personal, well-being, right? But it often comes at a price of what type of respect do you have in the industry, right? Because oftentimes if someone is overzealous, ambitious, but they're out of alignment with what really truly makes them happy, that unhappiness does carry over into their work and what they do. And so oftentimes this can result in the person being crabby or people not liking to work with that person. And they can, that is where I've seen in a cultural sense in an organization, those are where I've seen them become, what's considered a toxic employee, right? Yeah. So as organizations, we really have to think about, when we're building our company culture, it's not just about, how much if this person's in a producer role, it's not just about, but they produce a lot for the organization, or they bring in a lot of clientele, or they have a hard to find skill set, whatever it is, right? You have to think about what is the impact of their presence. Because, for that one person, that could be creating, turnover around that person to where, okay, yeah, this person is successful and they are bringing in clientele, but if their presence is not welcoming to other members in the organization, then is it really worth it? And when it comes to the cost of our turnover, does the cost of our turnover outweigh what this individual is bringing in? So I have seen that most in, looking back throughout my career, I've seen it really across the board because there, sometimes people do go into careers for the wrong reasons, unfortunately, and when you invest so much in your education, you invest so much into becoming that role, whatever that is you're pursuing, it's hard to turn back at that point. And so people just want to, well, I'm just going to do it now because this is what, I've spent my time in. So yeah, that's where I would, caution any young professional or anyone, if they're in university, college, that what you're doing, it really is something that's in alignment with what brings you happiness, and something that you also feel, you're not what I call double-minded, where you're one person at work and one person at home. You want to be one person all the time.
Yes.
You don't want your work representative and then your home, your at home person, right? For me, I've always strived. It doesn't matter if, someone I'm close to hears a work call, or somebody at work hears me at home, right? They say, okay, that's Lizzy. That's her. That's her authentic self, So that's where I would, I really caution people when it comes to, and even, going into human resources, right? You have to love this. You have to love people. If you don't love people, if you don't want to get to know people, you're going to struggle. You're going to struggle.
Can you share some some advices um, for young aspiring HR people. So with regards to, well, you have that situation where you have a great candidate in front of you. However, you kind of sense already, well, on paper, this person looks amazing. It's actually also he or she conducts herself incredibly well. However, it doesn't feel like, okay, there's this fit. There are those two personalities, so the work and the
Mhm.
who am I really personality. So how is it
Mhm.
best to find out that, or what are the best techniques to find out whether there's a match, whether there's a match between the home and the work person?
Okay, so there's a match between the home or the work person. Okay, so I
Because you
would
sometimes
recommend,
sense
yeah.
this, right? So you sometimes sense, okay, well,
Mhm.
there's non-alignment. However, well, on paper it looks great. The person
Mhm.
is, well,
Yeah.
is it. So, and then it's like, okay, I have doubts, and then how can I find out whether those doubts are, well, founded?
Yeah. So this is what I've always done. Okay. Whenever you feel as though you have a candidate, and as to your point, everything about him looks right on paper, but when you talk to him, the vibe is wrong.
Mhm.
Right? Something is
Yeah.
off. You can't put your finger on it. In situations like that, I would um try to have a more, what I would consider a more intimate conversation with the person. So instead of, because some people just don't interview well,
Mhm. Mhm.
and they get nervous. Maybe they really want to work for your company, but it's like, they just get nervous. They clam up in the interview. And when people clam up, that can look different for everyone.
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay. For me, I talk a lot, right? Other people, they may not, you can barely get a word out of them, right?
Mhm.
So it looks different for every single person. And that, going back to, if you're going down the path of recruitment, if you're coming into the world of HR, that's where it's all about getting to know people,
Mhm.
right? And so it's just simple. Sometimes you can invite the candidate to the office, and instead of you conducting and just having a normal interview with your paper, and you're just sitting down and you're just doing this in front of the person, I would just say, hey, invite the person back. If you're on the fence about them being a fit for you, invite them back and just sit down and have a cup of coffee, a cup of tea with them, and just say, hey, I know that we've been talking about the position, but I do want to also get to know you as a candidate. Tell me a little bit more about yourself, and then try to understand, a little bit more about the person. Because there's many things in somebody's journey that you're not going to get out of the, 30-minute interview that you have
Mhm.
with them. It's a very narrow window that we're giving ourselves to evaluate people and figure out if we're going to go on to spend 40 hours a week with that person or more, right? So I would always say, if you're on the fence, but you feel like the person has the qualifications, that you want to do more to try to get to know them. And you can't, you shouldn't just do that with one candidate. You should do that with any candidate that's interviewing for that role, so that you give everyone an equal opportunity to further express themselves in an environment that's not as intimidating as like a full-on interview. It's still a part of the interview, but you really want people to kind of be able to let their guard down a
Yeah.
bit, and to open up is really the goal of that. So that's what I would recommend in a situation like that. Also, when it comes to diverse candidates, maybe there's something about that person that you don't know,
Mhm.
but there's something about them that makes them a diverse candidate.
Mhm.
And so I've seen it a lot of times where you see it on paper, that the person is a great fit, but then you interview with them and it's almost like they're holding
Mhm.
something back.
Mhm.
sometimes people don't know if they are going to be included, and if the environment that they're coming into is going to be inclusive. So they do put up a guard in those type of situations as well. So that's where I recommend that if you are looking, not just in terms of, cultural fit, but if you're also looking to diversify your organization, thinking outside of the box in terms of how you interview candidates and how you get to know them, thinking about it from an inclusivity perspective. Is this interview process inclusive of people with disabilities? Is this are the questions that we're asking, is the format that we're in, is it too formal? Is it too intimidating for somebody who is a diverse candidate? So you want to think about those things, because if you go back and you see a trend of a certain type of candidate who they're qualified for your organization, but they're not quite making it past that interview process, you want to go back and you want to look at that interview process objectively and try and say to yourself, how can we make our interview process more inviting so that when people do interview with us, they feel as though they can be their authentic self in that interview? Now, of course, this only works if your actual culture is values authenticity, which is a whole nother conversation. But if that's where your organization is, right, and you're just having issues with getting the candidates, that is something that I do recommend, is going back and looking at that and seeing how you can make that process more inclusive.
What do you think are the biggest no-goes in an interview process that should emphasize inclusivity, however occasionally lacks? I think that it's an area where many companies need to do lots of work, given it may be something that is, well, put on websites, but it may not be deeply rooted inside the organization. So what do you think are the biggest no-goes?
I think the biggest no-goes when it comes to, I guess your question is centered on the efforts around the diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Exactly.
Is that kind of your, okay.
Exactly. So for example, when you look at some interviewing panels, that, well, they may reflect the company incredibly well. However, it may not encourage diverse candidates to be very open about their concerns. So let's say, okay, it's a panel of three men, and you're interviewing a woman. It may not be very inviting, and it may not be a very open conversation.
Correct. So first I'll take that from the candidate perspective, and then I'm going to circle back around to what companies should do, because see, the way that my mind works is I always try to put myself in the shoes of the employee, okay, and the person who's coming in that experience that they're having, that journey map that's being created throughout the interactions with our organization. So as a candidate, number one, if I value being in an environment that is diverse, and I'm looking to be in an environment where I see other people like me, or there's other people in that organization that I can identify with based on, some sort of something that is personal to them in their life. It could be a number of different things. When we're thinking about diversity, I don't want us to just simply focus on race, because I think a lot of times race and gender is where our minds go to in the West. But there's many other areas of diversity, especially when it comes to special abilities, okay, or disabilities, okay. So when we think about diversity, let's make sure that we're thinking about it in all its forms, because that's when the creativity starts to flow, and we start to say to ourselves, okay, this is much more than what we originally pictured it to be. Okay, so as a candidate, if I'm coming in, there's only a few resources, a few tools that I can look at to kind of see what your values are. So number one, I'm going to go to your website. I'm going to see, do you make a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion? Do you have employee resource groups? How accessible is your website if it's, someone that needs accommodations in that process to interview, right? There's a couple of fundamental things that I'm going to look for on your website. If it's not there, I'm also going to be looking on social media to see if it's there. I'm also going to go to your LinkedIn and I'm going to click on your people and I'm going to scroll down to see if there's anyone who looks like me, how many people look like me, what are their titles, what does your board look like, what does your executive team look like? Okay, so those are going to be some of the key things that I'm going to look for to see how inviting is this going to be for me, okay? So I say that to say, if as an organization, you are trying to attract a diverse employee base, you have to make sure that in those key places that candidates are looking, that you are putting language there, that you are, if you have employee resource groups, if you are starting some sort of mentoring program for women, you want to make sure that you're talking about those things on a regular basis. Don't just put it on your website and say, well, back in 2021, we put this content on our website. And so we're still doing that, right? We want to see it in action and we want to see, what are you doing today? So make sure, if this is something that you're trying to do, make sure that you continuously talk about it, because the more that you talk about it, not only is it good for you attracting diverse candidates, but it's also good internally for you because you're reinforcing a value that you're driving throughout your organization. Okay, so number one, make sure that you're talking about it. Talk about it on your website. Talk about it on LinkedIn. If you are a large enough organization to where you do have a significant social media presence, then you want to talk to the person that's heading your social media, and you want to ask them, hey, can you amplify voices of women in our organization? Can you amplify, insert whatever group of diverse employees that you're trying to attract? Can we amplify those voices by giving them a platform in these key areas to where, they're visible? Okay, so that's very, very important. Okay. The other aspect of it, so let's say you're to the point now, okay, you're going into that interview. I'm a candidate, I'm going into the interview, I've done my research, and I'm going to go into that interview, and I'm in an interview with a panel of people that are, in my opinion, I don't identify with them, okay? That's okay. I don't think that is something that is going to automatically, like, oh, nobody's here that looks like me, I'm out of here, this isn't the right company for me. It's not, that's not how diverse candidates think. It helps, okay, if there's someone there, it definitely helps, okay? But what also is key is how inviting is the conversation? Is this panel of individuals, are they really trying to get to know me? Are they, being professional within my interview? So if I'm a woman, right, no one should be asking me if I have children during this interview. They shouldn't be asking me things that are, something that would be unique to my experience based on my presentation.
But that doesn't happen anymore, right?
It still happens in certain parts of the globe. I'll just say that in certain parts of the globe, it does still happen. Those are conversations, that HR professionals do still have. I know it's hard to believe, but we have to continue, because remember, the workforce that we're currently in is a multi-generational workforce, okay? And so depending on what industry you're in, where you are in the world, okay, there are still certain things that happen that we, should not be happening. Okay. But using that as an example, because it's an obvious one. Okay.
Absolutely.
Now, candidates may disclose these things about them during the interview. So, for example, if I'm a woman and I expose and I say that, I have children, right? Because I do see a lot of women expose that about themselves during the interview. Personally, I don't see anything wrong with it. Okay. If you're a mother, be proud you're a mother. That shouldn't be something that holds you back, or, you shouldn't feel like you have to hide your life in order to get a job. Okay. So that is, something that I have always been very transparent about. And a lot of time, listen to what people are disclosing about themselves personally, because when people disclose things about themselves personally, okay, they're testing the waters with you to see, do you accept this? So if somebody says, I have children, it could be a man, it could be a woman, whoever, however they identify, okay, and they say to you, I have children, you want to, if you're looking to have an inclusive environment, you want to be encouraging, you want to be like, oh, you have children? Oh, that's great. These are our, as an organization, this is how we support working parents. Okay. As an organization, this is how we can support you in that personal life journey, right? So use those as opportunities of when people are disclosing something about themselves, they're giving you little treasures, a little treasure, like, okay, I'm giving you this little fact about myself. And don't take those things lightly. While you're interviewing that person, make sure that if you're looking to get people in, you want to be inviting and encouraging, and make sure that your culture does support that, right? Because there are a lot of, fast-paced careers and things like that, it does make it a little bit more challenging. So you want to be honest about those things, right? You don't want to rule people out, obviously, but you have to figure out ways, if somebody's telling you something personal beyond the professional, that is your cue to talk about your inclusivity from that vantage point. And so, that would be what I recommend. You don't have to be diverse. You just have to care. And if you can come across and express that you care about what the person's telling you, you're honestly interested in them, then it doesn't matter who that person is on the other side. We're all human beings. There's going to be a connection there. I promise you. But it starts with us being vulnerable ourselves as the interviewer, right? To have those conversations.
Yeah, it's absolutely wonderful what you just said, because it's like so useful to many of our listeners, given I think many organizations realize, okay, well, we lack in diversity, and it's not just something that is close to some people's heart, but it's also something that, well, kills innovation, that doesn't make us as open-mindedness as we should be, that it doesn't make us as productive as we should be, because we're everyone in the firm has very similar ideas about how things should go. And there, well, to be diverse, I think, means for me also very much a diversity of ideas, a broadening of horizons. And therefore, it's like absolutely essential for every company to be diverse, to embrace different kind of thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. Diversity starts with listening. Whatever diversity means, it always, to you as an individual, it always starts with listening. It never starts with speaking. We have to listen. We have to listen to our candidates. We have to listen to our employees. We have to listen to those thoughts, because nothing is more sad than an organization full of diverse people with no diversity in thought. That's the saddest thing to me. Yeah. So let's not do that to our people. Let's embrace their ideas. Let's embrace innovation. That is one of the things that I love about my current company, Ascendion, is that we truly believe in diversity of thought. That is what propels us. And so I've seen the mountains that embracing diversity of thought, I've seen what that can do for an organization. And so if your organization is struggling with that, it's not a hard thing to embrace. It just simply starts with listening and listening to the ideas that are coming in. It doesn't mean that you have to adapt every single idea, that comes in there, that you have to, take it in and be like, okay, this is, you have to do these things, right? But it comes first with listening and then being able to talk through that idea. And you'll often find that, okay, I wasn't able to see their point of view before, but now I can see how the path that we're on, how we can incorporate that idea to make this even stronger. So that would be my recommendation. If you're struggling with that, just listen to people, get people together, just say, hey, you know what? I haven't done a great job at listening to your ideas. I want to listen. So just, listen. The key there is to listen and to not talk, right? Because it gets so tempting. If that is one of your areas that you're working on, is listening, it gets so tempting, to speak and to say, no, no, no. But again, the idea is listening. And then at the end of that saying, okay, I heard you, I'm going to think about it. And let's come back and talk about this in a day or two. It's very, very simple. It goes back to what I said before, building the relationships, getting to know our people. I also wanted to circle back around because I don't think I answered half of your question on what's a no-no in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion. But I feel it's strongly to say, one of the biggest no-nos when it does come to DEI work is that oftentimes companies, the first thing that they reach for is to go to their website, into social media, and into doing all those things to talk about, how this is their value and their mission and all of these things. But before you actually do that, and if this is something that this is something close to your heart within your own organization, this is a value that you have, talk to the people that you already have. Go to them and just say, hey, I want to have a conversation with you on, what can we do to make the organization more diverse? Okay. How do you feel that we can strengthen our diversity initiatives? Now, don't burden that marginalized community with doing that work, right? But go to them and make sure that you're having the conversations, even if you only have one or two people, that's okay. Make sure that you're including them in that conversation. Ask them if they want to be included in that conversation. If they do they want to continue to be included in that conversation? Some people will say no, and that's okay. Some people will say yes, and they do want to be included, and that's great. But understand that in order to make it real, it's not about what we're putting on our website, what our competitors are doing, and what, versus what we're doing. It's really about how are we currently treating the people that we do have, that we already have and recruited here? What is their experience, and how can we make it better? Because nothing is worse than doing a diversity hiring campaign only to hire diverse people. Those diverse people the first thing they're going to do when they come into the organization is look for people like them. They're going to go to that employee. They're going to have a conversation with that employee. And then if that employee the current employee is not having a good experience, it's going to be a very hard start to continue to build that community in your organization. So make sure that it's not just about going out and hiring a bunch of people, but make sure that you're actually taking care and taking into account of the current diversity hires that you have, and make sure that they're feeling the inclusion, that they're feeling a part of the conversation. Because if you don't do that, it can backfire once you start getting people hired into the organization. So that is one big, big no-no that I do want to say. you have to be careful about that. Okay.
Perfect. I think it's a very, very positive and very, very great closing remark. Talk to people in your organization before you spread the word to the world, basically.
Yes.
Lovely.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You want to make sure that your employees are your number one advocate, ambassador for your brand, that they believe in what it is that you're trying to do and what you're trying to achieve. Once you get the buy-in internally, that is when it's the best time for you to take that messaging externally. And remember, anytime it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's a journey. Okay. It doesn't happen overnight, and it can be a long journey. It doesn't always have to be, but the biggest thing is just get it started. Just get it started, and start with your people. Start with the people that you have. And if you do that, I promise you, you will go much, 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 much further than you ever thought and realized when it comes to creating an authentic, diverse employee experience.
Perfect. Lizzy, thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you so much for giving us so many hints on what to improve. And I must say, I take from this very much, okay, the good news is, well, if you realize, okay, you can be more diverse, or you should be more diverse, it's not like an Herculean task, but it's doable if you talk to people in your organization and then take it from there and promote diversity through conversations within the organization.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Diversity work is a work of the heart. And so you have to start in the heart and go from there.
Lizzy, thank you so much again. It was great talking to you.
Great talking to you as well. Thank you so much, Benjamin.
And thank you all guys for listening in. I hope you appreciate the conversation as much as I did. Take care and see you later.